Cool. So welcome to Copilot 0 to Hero Season 2, Session 5. Just if there was any more confusion around that. We are talking about advanced agent capabilities in Copilot Studio specifically, where we will talk about multi-agents, tools, triggers, MCP, where we will, for this evening, I'm going to build one agent, but live layer by layer. And hopefully all goes well. I didn't sacrifice anything. I just have a good cup of coffee. So hopefully everything goes well. So just a little bit of what you will walk away with this evening is obviously a mental model, because this, I don't know for anyone on the call, but this is something that I ask myself regularly is when to add a tool, when is it a child agent, when is it a connected agent, or when do I use an MCP server? So we'll cover that a little bit. Because oftentimes there's, as Microsoft is evolving and tech is evolving, there's so many things getting added onto the pile, and it sometimes becomes hard to make the decision, or even if you're a consultant, advise your clients as to when to use what. Then we'll do a live demo. As I've mentioned, we'll have one agent, then we'll just continue to add to that agent. And then a few gotchas, just going over some of the non-obvious platform constraints that will bite you at 11 p.m. or maybe if you're the early riser at 4 a.m. in the morning. And then I will, because I typically do this, and I haven't done this in a while, actually for this whole season, I haven't given any homework. So I would like to give everyone on call a homework activity this evening. So yeah, any questions before we dive into the content? We're good. Great. So with that said, so let's start with the mental model. Typically, when agents just became a thing, a lot of people built their agent instructions that if you were to paste those instructions into a Microsoft Word document, it could easily be 2 or 3 pages long. So what a person, or how you should structure your mind, is that one agent should in essence equal one job. So as I've mentioned, in the past, you would have someone build an agent and you would have like 14 tools, 900 words of instructions. And what that creates is an agent that behaves in a very unpredictable manner, because eventually it loses context. And it really doesn't know what it's doing anymore. It will jump to just whatever conclusion it would, because in the end, the agent just wants to pop out an answer. So last week, we spent some time on what it takes to build a good agent. This evening, we're going to take it a step further on how do we build that agent in a more advanced way. So instead of cramming every capability into one agent's instructions until it forgets how to do all of them well, we're going to see how we can break them up, or at least take away from the instructions and add things like skills and tools and knowledge, all of those things that we can now add to agents to make it behave in a more consistent way, but also to allow the agent to not get too confused. Okay, so we'll just go over that. So on the question of which one do I reach for? So typically, when using a tool, think of it as a capability. So in other words, the agent needs to do one thing, either send something, look up something, calculate something. And tools, the tool is the blue block, and MCP server typically goes hand in hand, because under the tools section is where you would find the list of MCP servers that's available, or even custom built MCP servers if your industry has built some. So as mentioned here, for an MCP server, a tool surfaces that, right? So what's nice about an MCP server is you publish this tool once, and then you can consume it from anywhere. So once you've built this MCP server, it's not just Copilot Studio that will benefit from using it. It would also be Claude or GitHub Copilot. You can literally use that MCP server anywhere where you require those CRUD tasks or even additional activities to be done through the MCP server. Great. Then you've got child agents and connected agents. So could be very confusing, but it's not really. So a child agent is an agent that lives within your parent agent, and it cannot do anything outside of the parent. Where a connected agent is an agent that is it's also another parent agent, and it only gets called as a tool whenever your agent calls it. So at this stage, it can sound a little confusing. We'll see that built out a little bit in the demo. So with that said, we're going to jump straight into demo, the first piece of the demo, which is adding the tools. So we can have one agent, but we can have many tools. Just something that I want to mention with regards to tools is typically in the past, when we were building agents, your instructions was the core element or the core thing that gave your agent its behavior. With a tool, the description literally is the prompt for that tool. So if you put a bad description, or you word it badly, or there's too many tools that's worded similarly, the agent will or could get confused as to which tool to use. So this is very important. Also, inputs the agent infers versus what it asks for. This is also something very important to understand when we're adding tools, but we'll go into the details of that. So in the end, what we want to do is we want to be very clear on what. So as an example, for an agent, you might have an ops assistant. You want to be very clear on when it needs to create, when it needs to notify, and when it needs to do a lookup. So it typically is you become the orchestrator of when and where these things get called. And if you describe them in a good way, then your agent will be able to orchestrate when it calls what in a predictive manner, instead of just jumping at random for anyone that it feels suits the purpose. So with that said, I'm quickly going to jump to the new Copilot Studio experience. So just by show of hands, for those in the session, first of all, has anyone played around with the new experience? Cool. Richard. Okay, great. For those of you who haven't, this is going to be a nice, exciting journey for you. Then secondly, how many of you in the call have already built an agent, not necessarily in the new experience, but have built agents inside of Copilot Studio? Okay, there's a few more hands. Cool. Great. So let's get started. So on the screen here, to get to the screen that I'm on now, you will have to navigate. So this is where Alistair mentioned, if you don't see what I'm seeing at this stage, it's probably because of the URL that I have in here. So you would go copilotstudio.microsoft.com. That will take you to the normal, whatever is generally available. If you go copilotstudio.preview.microsoft.com, you get access to the preview features. Just something to note is anything that has the word preview associated with it should typically not be put in production, because it is preview. That means Microsoft can at any point in time decide that, oh, this feature did not quite work the way we thought it would, and then they just remove it. So if you have put it in production, that could, as you can imagine, really break stuff. However, there has been some functionality. I know especially some things or tools inside of the Power Platform or Power Apps that's been in preview for over a year. So people have really started doing the thing that we suggest you don't do by putting it in production, but it's been there in preview for so long. But there's always that thing that Microsoft could just take it away. So just be cautious when going into preview or using preview tools. So I've got a little bit of a pre-built agent that I did, because as I've mentioned, I don't want things to just break down horribly and then I go cry in a corner because my live demo didn't work. So what I did is I built an agent called Policy Buddy, and I just called it new for the new experience. But typically, if you wanted to start afresh, what you would do is you can either click this agent block, where you can click to create a new agent. And then what you would do is you would give your agent a title and you would start with instructions. That's probably the easiest way to start with building an agent and getting it to do something. Obviously, once you are here and you've got your instructions, you will see on the right-hand side, there's a few options of what you can add to this agent to, let's say, for the lack of a better word, to make your agent smarter and to be able, and your agent to be able to do certain things, right? You can also see at the top level, you can choose the model that your agent should use. So by default, in the new experience, it defaults to Claude Sonnet 4.6. But as you can see, we've already got access to Claude Sonnet 5 in here, as well as Opus 4.7 and Opus 4.8. So it really is up to you which of these models you want to use for your agent as a default. In the old experience, this used to default to GPT-5. I think it was 5.5 that it defaulted to. Al and then Malachi.
Just an update on that. Even though the models are available in your tenant, remember it's a sub-processor. So there's still no right words around where that data actually gets, the inferences and the tokenization happens.
Yeah.
It's probably not happening in country. So from a data residency and a sovereignty perspective, if that is the case, you're going to have conversations. You can opt to say delete my tokenization and things like that, and chunking and all of that. It's the same for when you want to introduce Claude into Foundry, because that model is now available, Claude.
Yeah.
Well, so what is it? Opus, Sonar, Fable, one of those. It is available now in Foundry as of the 29th of June, but know that these things happen outside of your tenant boundary. So just be careful.
Thanks for that, Al. Malachi?
Yes, Karika. My question is, in regards to selecting the Claude models, which are better, the Claude models or the ChatGPT models? Because I personally use Claude, and the new experience and seeing this for the first time is actually quite shocking, because that options was not there before, or Claude wasn't there the last time I played around with.
Oh wow! Okay.
So yeah.
You might not have played around with it for quite a while ago, hey?
Yeah.
Okay. So I typically, just the short answer, and I might be a bit biased in my answer here, is I really appreciate the Claude models. I do feel their response is much better than the GPT models, but what I like about the models that's listed here is it gives you a little bit of a description of what these models are best used for. So going back to what I mentioned when I just started, when you create or you have that mental model of one agent equals one job, right? You should start thinking of creating your agents in such a way where the agent has a task that it needs to execute. And based on that, what model at that time for this agent and what it needs to execute, what would be the best model or best fit model for that?
It's going to come back to preference, right? There are models that launch weekly, and it's the flavor of the month, right? I mean, there's a new GPT 5.6 called Sol that's available, and that's not, well, it's there. We don't have Fable from Claude yet, and Microsoft's got their own models as well, and I'm not sure when they're introducing, is it Maya or something like that?
Yeah, I saw that. I can't remember what it's called, but I did see that.
I think it's called Maya, their own models. So these are the two providers, not models, because GPT's got 4 different models, and they'll probably be introducing things like MOE models as the platform, well, as we adopt AI better. And then obviously you've got 4 from Claude. The latest ones always use the most tokens, so something like 4.6. Yes, we don't have Fable yet, but if you look at the tokenization, understand that you are going to have to work within the parameters of a token budget. So think about it that way. Because Microsoft is going to want to sell you the Copilot credit stuff, right?
And I have to agree with you on that, Al, because I know they are busy revising what the licensing model would look like. So at this stage, the licensing model, I mean, for now, it's the you either have Microsoft 365 Copilot, a license, or you've got a Copilot Studio license, but I don't know what that will look like maybe a month or two from now. So yeah, it is, we need to, it's gonna, I think it will probably go, as you say, it will probably become a very much token-based thing, and then choosing a model will probably become a little bit easier, because then it's going to be based on the token consumption within Copilot Studio. But just before I go into, I don't know, okay, please say, and then I'll give over to Regard.
I'm good.
Okay, cool. Regard?
Okay, just 2 points. On the data sovereignty point, yeah, you can't control it in Copilot Studio, but AI Foundry, we can run in Europe under GDPR. So from a
depends on the model. So if you look at, I'll share the article in the chat where Microsoft announced Claude, but they're very cagey about, Claude is available in Foundry, but when they start talking about things like inference is processed in Azure, and customers can choose between global and US data zones for teams with data residency requirements. Anthropic operates the inference and is the data processor and SLA provider. They operate the inference, so wherever they run it. And also, when you look at Foundry and models, not only models in Foundry, but also Copilot specific to the European Union, there was an article about 2 weeks ago that says, if our data centers are at capacity, we're shipping it outside of the borders to do the inference, and then we'll give you the data back.
Yeah.
You can also request, I can't remember where I read it, where you can actually say that, I don't know if it was in this article that I'll post in the chat, but you can, and it's the same with, I think it was the
Foundry, you can
OCR
essentially
stuff.
And get the region you want.
Anthropic is not going to tell you what region they're running the inference in. Microsoft is currently just saying, oh, it's available, right? And Anthropic is handling the inference as a sub-processor. There's still no clarification that Anthropic runs in Azure in the data center, and the models are hosted by Microsoft. That's the difference here. It's an API to Anthropic somewhere, right? So when you look at crunching models in South Africa, you would probably, and Anthropic is, I think you can get it through AWS. But from a sovereignty perspective, there's no mention of where Anthropic is. The inference is actually happening from a data center perspective. It's not like it lives inside of Azure.
Yeah, that's sketchy. Yeah, and at the moment, I know you can only deploy to East US and Sweden Central by default.
Cool. Yeah. And I think I'll also in your session.
But you can request it because, Reichardt, you requested it and you got it, right?
Yeah, I've got essentially Haiku through to Sonnet 5. I don't have access to Fable 5 yet.
Yeah, but you specifically requested it and you got it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a request.
Yeah. It's scummy how they do it, but it's essentially based on usage.
Yeah.
Okay.
So based on your current capacity, you either get access or you don't.
Specific to Foundry. This is specific to Foundry.
Yeah, this is very specific to Foundry. Yeah. They look at your usage there. So yeah, it's been available for a few months now. And then the other point in terms of these models, my experience has been the GPT models are better suited for agents because they stick to instructions. The Claude models tend to drift and do their own thing.
Yeah, but that's ethereal, right?
Yeah, but you can't change on this level. You can't change the temperature and rein the models back in.
Yeah, there's no temperature.
Yeah, no.
I mean, that's a Foundry conversation.
Exactly.
So yeah, on the Foundry side, we don't generally, or I don't generally use Claude models for agents. It's GPT. Then yeah, for the 3 new GPT models, it's essentially what they did, what Anthropic's doing. What it's Sol, Terra, Luna, and it's essentially a Haiku, Sonnet, Opus model. That's essentially what they broke. The new 5.6 is essentially 3 different models, just dumbed down to some extent. I don't believe they're available here yet, but you can get them in Foundry.
Cool. Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll deep dive on that in some of the sessions that's still coming up, where we actually will go down the Foundry agents in Foundry route. And I think the reason also why it doesn't go to that technical depth in Copilot Studio is because we must remember Copilot Studio is still very much a platform for our low-code, no-code developers. So it's typically someone who needs an agent to do something, integrates into the Microsoft tech stack of the Microsoft 365 tech stack, but you can extend it or even build it even more advanced when going into the Foundry side of things. Cool. Okay, and there's just a comment in the chat also saying that Claude tends to forget either, or maybe has to do with prompts or instructions given. I agree. Good prompting also helps in that front. And then I have to say, the skills element that's available here in the new experience, the way you can add skills now, that also really guides the agent really well into how to use what. With that said, I'm quickly going to jump back into this policy buddy that I've built. Some of you who were here last week, this would look familiar. Malika, I'm just going to quickly cover this section, then I'll get to your question. So obviously we give it some instructions. You can format this here. We've learned last week that you kind of have to have an objective, an audience, what's in scope, what's out of scope, response rules, action requests, and the tone. All of that can be built into the instructions. But what we can also add to our agents is the likes of tools, skills. We've got a new button, Microsoft IQ. Once again, as Al has mentioned when we just started, if you don't see Microsoft IQ, it is a preview functionality. So because I am in the preview mode, that is why I can see Microsoft IQ. Knowledge, most of you are familiar with or should be familiar with if you've built an agent in Copilot Studio before. Here we've just given it a policy document or guide so that if anyone asks any policy related questions, it will go to the knowledge. Then we've also got connected agents. So remember earlier I spoke about child agents and connected agents. Something that is not available in the new experience, only in the old experience, is child agents. So in the old experience, you had your tabs here, and then there was child agent, or you had agents, and you could add child agents that was specific to this agent. You unfortunately cannot do this in the new experience. When you are choosing connected agents, it's going to show you other standalone agents which you can connect this agent to. And then obviously based on the skills or your instructions will tell this agent when to use this connected agent that we've connected to it. Malachi, I'm quickly going to go to your question.
Hi, Karika. Yes, my question is regarding around the skills. Does it work exactly the same as an MD file as you would give Claude, or is it a bit different here in Copilot Studio? Oh, I see. Yeah, there is a.
It's exactly the same. So what you can do is you can either upload a skill, as it says, it must be a skill.md file or a zip package that includes the skill.md. And then the skill.md must contain the skill name and descriptive formatted in YAML. Okay. Or alternatively, what you can do, and that's typically how I do it, is you can create a skill from blank, where it kind of guides you in Copilot Studio, your skill name, the description. Remember, we mentioned descriptions once again, literally is your prompt, and then you've got your instructions. And what I like about Copilot Studio is it kind of gives you a guideline, especially for someone who's never done this before and who's just starting to use skills. They can get a good idea of what the instructions should more or less look like for the skill to be used. Okay, so this is typically how you would add skills. Then if we look at tools, the type of tools that we can add is we obviously have our usual connectors. So anyone who's familiar with the Power Platform knows that we've got connectors that we use either in Power Apps or Power Automate. We can also use those connectors here. The new thing that we have is obviously MCPs, Model Context Protocol. And what that allows is when you add this MCP server as a tool, it exposes the actions that this tool can action. Obviously, it's also, it inherits the permission of the person that's using or accessing this agent. So if they don't have access, for example, if I added the WorkIQ SharePoint MCP server, if action in there says someone can create a SharePoint site, that's the action. But if I, as a user, querying this agent or asking to create a site and I don't have permissions to be able to create sites in my environment, the agent would not successfully complete that task because it would say that it doesn't have the permissions to do that. Okay. Something else that I want to mention here is obviously with connectors, once again, for those of us who are familiar with the connectors, you've got premium and standard connectors. Standard connectors obviously doesn't incur any additional costs, whereas premium connectors does include some licensing requirements. Now, when I jump back to Model Context Protocol, there's a few new things here. Some of them are in preview, especially all the IQ things. So WorkIQ Mail, WorkIQ Teams, WorkIQ Calendar, SharePoint, OneDrive. These are very powerful MCPs. They really do amazing things. If you want your agent to, once someone has generated a proposal, you want them to mail the people that's listed or the project manager that's listed in the proposal, it can go ahead and do that. But it doesn't send the mail. What it does is, or what I've seen it do, is it adds it to your drafts. And then you can review it first before it sends it. Okay. Something that I want to mention here is when you use any of these IQ features specifically, I think, and I'll just keep me honest here, I think that is when, if you publish your agent, everyone using the agent that's making use of these IQ features needs to be a Copilot M365 licensed.
Or a Copilot credit.
Or Copilot Studio, yes, package, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of ways of doing this. If you, look, our recommendation is to give everyone a Copilot license and then you'll never have a problem. If you are going to go down the route where you want to build agents for users who don't have a Copilot license, you're going to have to license the usage of those agents with what they're calling Copilot credits. It's no longer called the message capacity. It's still the same price, $200 per 25,000 messages per month. You're going to have to do that. So then, well, actually, I don't know, Karika. I'm almost sure that if your agent has any, you'd have to check, and it's great that you brought it up. If you are using the WorkIQ things, you can't. I think that's the answer. It's not a Copilot credit thing. You need a full-blown license for that function.
You need a full-blown license with any of the IQ features that you are adding to your agent, and when your users, you're exposing this to your users. So, for instance, if you only use the Microsoft Dataverse MCP server, your normal licensing for Dataverse would apply. So, whoever is building this agent, let's say it's a service account, at least should have a premium license to access this premium feature or connector, which is Dataverse. But for instance, for SharePoint, if you added just a normal MCP server that talks to SharePoint, not the IQ specific one, that should be fine because it's once again a standard connector. So with that said, I'll go ahead and add WorkIQ. I know I'll add the WorkIQ for SharePoint. And then I'll also add, I want the WorkIQ for Word. There we go, WorkIQ for Word. I have not seen, if I just quickly search for IQ, I have not seen an IQ for PowerPoint yet. And I know that it sounds like I'm fixated on PowerPoint, but if the IQ for PowerPoint gets added here, I think we're going to be able to make phenomenal presentations. But as you can see, you can also connect to Fabric IQ. So there's quite a few things that you can connect to here. I'll tell you why the IQ ones are so powerful is because the instructions becomes less and less complicated. Remember in the past when you were building an agent, you had to be very specific with your instructions. With the work IQ for Word and the work IQ for SharePoint, it actually becomes really easy to tell the agent when a file lands in SharePoint and you provide perhaps the URL, please take that document and create a proposal for me. So it's really getting to that place where it starts becoming really autonomous and the user has to type less. How do we do that, or how do we have our agent do all of that automatically? Well, that's when we start going to workflows. So I'm going to leave this without saving. So the workflows in the new experience is also really, really cool and very more or much more advanced than what it was in the old experience. So obviously before you start the flow, you have your trigger type. So it can either be a manual trigger, can be a recurrence, it can be triggered from a connector from an external service, or when an HTTP request is received, or when an agent calls the workflow. So you can trigger this workflow as a tool from the agent. And this becomes really, really cool. And then automatically it adds the respond back to the agent step in here. What you can also add in here is you can add another agent if you wanted to. You can add human review. So in other words, you can do this action, but before you proceed to the next step, I want some human input here. So you can give it a title, a message, and actually assign it to someone. And also where they should assign it to this individual, via Teams or via Outlook. So that's really, really cool from a workflow perspective. And then once a workflow is created, maybe I'll just save this workflow quickly as mail policy result. Okay, so we'll just leave it like that. I don't need a workflow for this. This is just a silly example because you could have easily used the Outlook IQ tool in your agent to do that. But I wanted to show you how you could add the workflow. Did I publish it? That's probably why it's not showing up. Just publish this workflow quickly. But that's typically how you would create a flow and then call that flow from your agent. So now that we have this, oh, and I've got IQ still in the search bar, so we don't want that. Let's add tools again, workflows. There we go, mail policy result. So I could easily add this workflow. And then what you could do is in your skills or your instructions, it really is up to you where you want to put that. For me personally, I actually prefer keeping my instructions rather clean and using skills. And rather specifying the instructions, if this is the scenario, please activate this skill. If this is the scenario, please use that skill. And from the skill, you can determine whether it should use the Work IQ Word tool or whether it should use the SharePoint tool or kick off the mail policy result. Okay. Any questions on what we've discussed so far, or anything interesting that anyone else has been working on or have touched on with this new experience or even in the old experience? For those of you that are that's here for the first time, is what we've been explaining so far making sense? Okay, great. Well, I've got one hand, 2, 3. Great. I was just about to get worried. I was like, oh my goodness, what is happening? Cool. So let's keep that. So let's see how we can, and Karabo actually rightfully said you can ask Copilot to create a skill for you. So let's do exactly that. So I'm going to open my Microsoft 365 Copilot. I want to take this instructions, going to copy this, and I actually want to ask it to please change these set of instructions to be skills. And then what we'll do is we'll build it out. Because what I want to do is I want to show you when we actually preview this agent, how it calls the various skills. So it's given us 2 skills, which is great. So let's go ahead and add those skills. So we want to not upload now. We want to create from blank. The first skill's name is answer policy questions. So answer policy questions. And I actually want to tell it in our ask, please give proper descriptions and give the instructions in this format. Let's see what it gives us. So maybe not Copilot Studio related, but who's been playing with anything interesting inside of AI? Is there anyone else who's also, like Al, addicted to tokens and have been having a ball with AI? I'm assuming the silence is everybody is too scared to play with AI?
Hi, Karika. I have a question. In regards to skills section over here, is it the same as using Claude natively, where you can have more than one skill at a time, work hand in hand together, or are you limited in Copilot Studio to only have one skill?
No, you can add as many as you want, Malaka.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, you can add. So in another agent that I've built, I think I had 2 skills. And you can then in your instructions define when this is the scenario, please use skill A, and when that is the scenario, please use skill B, and any other scenario, use your best judgment. But you can have as many skills as you want. I don't know at the moment of any limitations that exist. You can go again.
One more question. So you mentioned that a good workflow that you personally use is having your skills set out beforehand and then prompting from there and not the other way around. And how does that actually work out for you? Because how long have you been using that workflow, if I may ask?
Well, actually, I haven't really built any workflows because for most of the agents that I've been looking at, the tools and the skills with the instructions has been sufficient.
And what does your token usage look like on that? Do you use more tokens or less, if I may ask?
You are asking good questions. I don't know. I really don't monitor
So
my
there's
agents
no way
to that
to
level.
accurately measure token usage inside of Copilot Studio. Well, actually, no. You can actually, there's an observability called Agent Ops where you can check your token usage, but you're not going to see it while you interact with the agent. So Karika, on the left-hand side in the nav, if you mouse over, is that Agent Ops one down?
It's Agent Ops. I've actually got it open, yeah.
Yeah, so you can see some things in there and you can see the credits used, but if you've got a license, you're not going to know how many tokens you use. It's only for when you have a Copilot credit pack and you're deploying agents for people without Copilot licensing. It's the same like what Claude subscription do you have, Malachi?
I've got the Pro one at the moment.
So you can see tokens, kind of like, if you're going to use something like CodeBurn to track things, but they're not giving you an upper limit. But with Copilot agents, even if you went and built an agent with Agent Builder, you as a user is not going to know how many tokens you've used. It's not measured in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I've heard from Microsoft, the Microsoft team especially, is that one message doesn't necessarily equate to 5 credit. It really is it depends on how the agent responds to what we need.
Yeah.
Or what we're asking. Okay, so I'm just using the sample that I got from Copilot. So obviously it's an answer policy question. So what we're saying is use this skill when an employee asks a general question about company policy. This skill helps employees understand company policy using only the improved employee quick policy guide, which is what we have as knowledge. And it's intended for quick practical policy guidance. And then we've obviously got it in the format that Copilot Studio wants, so we can go ahead and create that. So what I want to do is just with that skill added there already, I'm just going to click on preview quickly so that you can see that it actually does use the skill that we just fed it. So we want to ask, tell me about the Uber policy for work travel. So what you'll notice in the new experience, what we have is you've got an end user preview toggle. You'll notice because I don't have that switched on, it's actually telling me what it's busy doing. So it searched the knowledge first, then it loaded the skill, analyzing PDF. This is an internal thing that it does because the knowledge that I've attached is a PDF. So what we want to see is if it actually goes and gets our skill, which it doesn't look like it did. Because we wanted it to use our skill, which was called policy answer questions. So let's quickly see why I didn't use that. Oh, maybe because I didn't update the instructions. So what we want to do is when, that formatting is terrible. When users ask policy-related questions, please use the answer policy question. Okay, we'll save that. We're going to preview this. I'm going to start a new chat. What is the work travel policy regarding Uber? So there we go. It was all based on the instructions. Okay, so now you can see that it actually loaded our skill first, and our skill specified that you must only use the knowledge that's attached to this agent as well, and therefore it's now searching the knowledge. Now, as a developer, I have this view. If I did this in end user preview, I would not have seen all of this. I would have just seen the typical, we are looking for an answer and this is what we got to. But if you're not in the end user preview, you can actually see the steps that it's doing, and therefore you will know whether it's hitting the tools, the skills, or the knowledge sources that you've added. So typically your users, if they are using it, they will only see the here is what the policy says about Uber or transport costs for travel. Any questions? We're still good. I'm quickly going to jump back to our presentation. Great. I didn't go over to demo 2 yet, where you can actually connect another agent or do a child agent. But it will work in the same principle as we've just done. As I've shown you on the right-hand side, you can connect 8 other agents or existing agents. And once again, in a very similar manner, you would, in your instructions or via a skill, say, when the user asks this or this action happens, then go ahead and trigger that agent, whether it be a connected agent, whether it be a child agent. Okay. And then we did go over a little bit with MCP. And as we've mentioned, if you've already built an MCP server and all the existing MCP servers is something that you can use in Copilot Studio, you can use it in Claude as well as in GitHub Copilot. It's also, I think, available to use in the likes of Power Apps and Power Automate. Cool. This is just a few steps on how to connect the MCP. I kind of covered this already in the demo where you don't really need to open the MCP wizard. It's more clicking on tools, pointed at the MCP server you want to connect to, and you'll see that tool appear on the left-hand side. And then you can ask the question and see if the agent actually touches on that tool. So with that said, let me actually do that quickly. Just quickly for demos purposes, because I've now added these tools. If I quickly go back to build, I've added the work IQ, Word, SharePoint. I'm not going to trigger the workflow right now, but what I can do here is, because I've got the Word one, I can say, please create a short summary document on our company, or let's say employee benefits, our employee benefits listed in the policy. So what you should see is that it actually triggers the word IQ. It should ask me to allow. If it doesn't, it's probably because I've connected to it already. So what it will do is it should go through the information guide, and then it should create a Word document for me because I've connected it to the Word IQ. And that comes with a set of actions. So something that I haven't seen in the new experience, which I know was available in the old experience, is when you connect to that MCP server under tools, you have the ability to switch certain of its actions on and off. I have not seen that in the new experience. I haven't also delved into it very deeply, but I know in the, there you go. So it's connecting to the MCP Word server. So I need to allow it first, and then it will go ahead and create. It's going to ask you for this permissions required with the SharePoint Work IQ, with the Outlook. But yeah, as I've mentioned, I haven't seen the feature where you can switch certain actions off, which I know you could do in the old experience. And that was helpful if, like, for instance, if I talk to the Dataverse MCP server, if you didn't want people to necessarily be able to create, delete, or amend tables, you could switch those off, and then they're only allowed to update, create, amend, or delete record items and not necessarily tables. So let's see. You can open it here, created a docx, and there we go. I didn't necessarily have to specify the formatting, but I mean, it's put it in a nice format already, which is quite readable. We've got leave and time off, we've got expense claims, remote work and hybrid working, IT equipment and device support. So the Work IQ really allows you to do a lot of things, and it does it really, really well. Once again, any questions? We good? Okay. So typically with the triggers comes in with the workflow. As I've mentioned, you can either have a record that changes. That could be a trigger. It can be scheduled, or it can be another agent that triggers your flow. And then that's typically how it becomes, once again, as I've mentioned, autonomous. So you could have agents talking to agents, and the user doesn't really have to type in anything as long as your process is solid. Then obviously what's coming next in the next few sessions, as I start wrapping up on mine, is we'll touch a little bit on external agents. So that's bringing in the agents that you've built in Foundry. I know Richard has spoken about some models that's used, or agents that's built in Foundry, how you can bring those into Copilot Studio and utilize that as well. You can also bring your own model. The point that we eventually want to reach to is that Studio becomes the orchestration layer and not just the place where your intelligence lives. But as I've mentioned, this whole section is a whole session all on its own, but it is coming in the future sessions. Just a few gotchas that I've mentioned as well is tool descriptions really is the prompt. If your tool description doesn't explicitly say what it's used for. Also, when adding tools, make sure that you don't add ones that are too similar in nature, and the same would apply with your skills. Just because that would confuse the agent if they are too similar, unless your instructions, once again, is very clear on this scenario, use that skill, or for this scenario, use that one. But where you tell it to use its own judgment, if the descriptions is very close to one another, it might end up choosing the wrong one. Delegation isn't free, so every handoff is a chance to lose context. This is unfortunately something that does happen with agents as we build them. Preview versus general availability does matter. So as we've mentioned, if something says preview, use it, play with it, test it, but please don't put it into production. And when it misbehaves, read the activity map. So just to quickly show you again, once again, I did like the activity map in the old experience. In the new experience, with this agent ops, let me just see where that was. There you go, agent ops. I know here on the monitor section, we could see some of the sessions. Earlier when I tried looking at this, it said it couldn't load. But in the old experience, you could see all the queries that you did. So you could easily switch. I mean, if you wanted to switch back to the old experience, you just toggle this off. And then based on the queries that you've run in these, even if you've built it in the new experience, you'll still be able to see the activity against that. Cool. So with that said, I'm going to jump straight to your challenge this week. As I've mentioned, I've got some homework that I would like to dish out. Is for those of you that haven't built in Copilot Studio yet, please go build an agent and connect at least to one MCP server. And please feel free to post a screenshot in this channel of where you did that and how it actually returned the result that you were looking for. But yeah, that is my challenge to you this week. And then, is there any other questions? Yes, Malachi.
Yes, I have one question regarding the homework and the challenge. Do we actually need to have Copilot Studio licenses to perform those?
No, I think if you just have access, so if you've got a developer license for Power Platform, or you've got a developer environment, you would be able to play with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just for publishing, you would need to be licensed.